Hello, I'm Louise Jordan, I'm a songwriter, and I'm going to share with you my 5-step songwriting challenge. I hope you'll use it to write a song of your own as we work through the tasks together. You don't need to play an instrument and you don't need to have written a song before to take part. Songwriting really is an activity that everyone can enjoy. You might want to pause the video as we work through the tasks to give yourself a little bit more time to complete them. And you might want to have a pen and paper or an iPad or some way of making notes ready with you. I'm going to start by giving you a quick outline of my 5 steps to songwriting. Number 1, deciding what to write about. Number 2, writing a catchy chorus. Number 3, developing your story with verses. Number 4, composing a melody, writing both the rhythm and the tune. Number 5, arranging your accompaniment. As we work through the steps, I'm going to talk about a song that I've already written as an example. It's called Statistics Save Lives.
We need maths and we need science, facts that can be analysed. We'll use the proof that we've collected. Statistics save lives. The past can help predict the future if the data's brought to bear. Life is meant for learning lessons. The evidence will guide you there. We need maths and we need science, facts that can be analysed. We'll use the proof that we've collected. Statistics save lives.
Let's start with step 1, deciding what to write about. Last summer, I decided to write a series of songs about Florence Nightingale because I realised that it was coming up to the 200th year since she was born. I decided I wanted to celebrate all the things that Florence had achieved in her life. When I was at school, I was taught that Florence Nightingale was a nurse and that she'd travelled abroad to help soldiers who were fighting a war. Later on, I also found out that Florence had been a mathematician and that she had been a campaigner for equality. I decided I wanted to write songs about Florence Nightingale to share what I knew with other people. Florence was a statistician and she wanted to spend her life saving other people's lives. She believed that to do this, she needed to show the people in government how hospitals could be designed better and what changes in daily hospital life would be able to stop the spread of infection, for example, by people washing their hands regularly. Florence collected evidence from different hospitals and used this evidence to show what changes would make a difference. I decided to write about Florence Nightingale's work as a statistician. Now it's your turn to decide what you want to write about. Remember, this is just a starting point and it might change as your song develops. It might be that you want to write about a picture you've seen or something you watched on the TV. Something that you learnt yesterday or last week, a conversation that you had with somebody else, something about Florence Nightingale. It could be about somebody else that you know who works in healthcare, a friend, a member of the family, or another famous person. It could be about cleaning your hands. It could be something that happened to you today, something you heard, something you saw, something that you felt. It could be about someone that you heard about on the news who's done something fantastic. It could be about the birds singing in your garden or something you heard out of the window, or it could be about a rainbow sign that you saw when you went on a walk. Now's the time to pause your video and make a note of what you're going to write about. Once I've committed my idea to paper, I start making notes. Really messy notes. As long as you can read them when you come back to them, they don't have to be neat. Let's say we're writing a song to celebrate the NHS. How does it make you feel when you see a rainbow sign in someone's window? Have you created a rainbow? How many rainbows did you see today out on your walk? Why is the rainbow sign being used in this way? Who started it? Have you talked about the rainbows with anybody else? Write down any words, phrases or comments that come to mind. When I was writing Statistics Save Lives, I used a thesaurus. If you don't have a thesaurus, you might be able to find one on your computer in the word processor, or you might be able to look online and do a search for different words. I used my thesaurus to find out different ideas for the words number, data, and information. If you're writing about the NHS, you could look up the words health and system. Add all the new words that you come up with into your notes. No one's judging you, no one's going to mark your work. These are just for your reference, so write whatever comes to mind, even if you think it's really simple and obvious. Press pause here if you like, and add some more words to your notes. In my songs, I write about people from the past. Once I've decided who I'm writing about, I might go to a museum or a library. I might talk to teachers or authors and do some research online. I usually read lots of books, and I add all of these ideas into my notes. If you're writing about the NHS, do some research. When was the NHS established? Why was it formed? What are its aims? How has it changed over a period of time? Find out about your local hospital. What jobs do the members of staff do there? And is the hospital specialist in any particular area? Once I have a page full of notes, I move into the second part of the process, which is to identify what I want to say about this topic or this person. I use the question, who am I talking to? Is your song written for a friend? Is it for a younger relative or a neighbour? Maybe it's from a member of NHS staff. Maybe it's for somebody who needs cheering up or a politician. This helps me to set the tone of what I want to say, and also the type of language I might use. If you're not sure, just pick somebody for now. You can come back at a later stage and rewrite it for somebody else. I wanted my song, Statistics Save Lives, to be interesting. I wanted it to bring Florence Nightingale's story to life. I wanted it to be fun to listen to. I decided it should be an educational song for people of all ages, something that people could sing and dance along to and remember. Press pause here and write down who you're going to write your song for. Let's move on to step 2, writing a catchy chorus. There are lots of different types of chorus, but for this video, I'm going to suggest that you write a 4-line chorus. Because it's repeated, the chorus helps to make the message of the song clear. When I was writing Statistics Save Lives, I thought about how Florence wanted to use statistics to save people's lives. Statistics to save lives. I kept shortening the phrase, so it became Statistics Save Lives. It's short, it's catchy, and it became the last line for my chorus. I then went through the alphabet to find words that rhyme with lives. Dives, fives, hives, jives, knives, survives, wives, alive, realise, trivialise, analyse. Decide if you want your chorus to rhyme. It doesn't have to. If you do want it to rhyme, you'll need to choose which rhyming scheme to follow. You could use the rhyme scheme A, B, A, B, like in this example. I like to sing, I find it fun. I like the spring, I like the sun. You could use the rhyme scheme A, A, B, B, like in Humpty Dumpty. My song Statistics Save Lives uses the rhyme scheme A, B, C, B, where only the second and the fourth lines rhyme. And there are lots of well-known songs that don't rhyme at all. Have a go at writing your own chorus. You can go back to your notes and circle the most important words that you want to include. See what rhyming words you can come up with. And see if there are any alliterative words, words which start with the same letter, like statistics and save. And decide if you want your chorus to rhyme and what rhyme scheme you want to use. Press pause on the video so you can write your own catchy chorus. Let's move on to step 3, developing your story through the verses. When I was writing Statistics Save Lives, I separated out 4 things that I wanted to say about how Florence Nightingale used statistics. Firstly, Florence researched what happened in hospitals, and she gathered the evidence from the past to learn the lessons and avoid mistakes in future. Secondly, she looked for the truth rather than relying on her feelings and her instinct. Thirdly, she shared the evidence that she gathered with other people in power, like government ministers and the Queen. And fourthly, Florence wanted to use evidence to ask the people in power to change the system. If you're writing about the NHS, maybe you can think about 4 different ideas about how the NHS impacts you. Firstly, what is the NHS and what does it mean to you? Secondly, maybe you can think of a time when you've needed the help of the NHS, like visiting a dentist or going to your doctor's surgery. Thirdly, you might think about how grateful you are to the NHS now for what they're doing. And fourthly, you could think about what you hope will happen to the NHS in future. Once you've decided your story, start by writing down some words and phrases like you did for the chorus. And then decide whether you want your verses to rhyme and what rhyming scheme you might want to use. Pause the video here and write down the first 2 verses for your song. Let's move on to step 4, creating your melody or tune. You could choose a tune that's familiar, like a nursery rhyme or a folk song. For example, I was writing a song with a group of children about food, and there's a traditional folk song called The Girl I Left Behind Me. So we changed the words of the song to The Food I Left Behind Me. We imagined we'd gone on a picnic, and when we arrived at the picnic spot, we realised that we'd left the food at home.
I've been hungry since I left my house. We've been driving now for hours. I feel so sad I could almost cry. Now I realise what has happened. I don't care about my kite or ball, for each one just reminds me that I can't go back and pick up my food, the food I left behind me. Jam sandwiches and sausage rolls, I can taste the cheese and pineapple. They were in tin foil by the microwave, but the dog has probably had them.
If you want to write your own melody, I suggest you break it down into 2 parts. First, establish the rhythm, and then move on to the melody and the pitch of the notes. When you decide the rhythm, think about what your song is about. Is it a positive and happy song, or is it serious? Does it need to be fast to create a joyful tone? And do you have long words that you need to fit in? I start by speaking the words to try and establish a natural spoken rhythm. For example, if your song starts with the line, "Celebrate the NHS," say it over a few times. Celebrate the NHS. 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 It has 7 beats that are all the same value, the same length. And it goes over a sort of very easy 4-beat rhythm. Celebrate the NHS. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I could use this rhythm for the second line. They're working hard, they do their best. They're working hard, they do their best. It's got 8 syllables. They're working hard, they do their best. And that's not quite the same as the previous line, which had 7. So we might want to get rid of one of the words in the second line. Instead of they're working hard, they do their best, we can go to working hard, they do their best. And then we've got 2 equal lengths in our lines and it fits the same pulse. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. Moving on to the tune for your melody. Try to find the pitch of the first note by saying it again and again. And then pause on the first syllable, the first note of the line. Celebrate the NHS. Celebrate the NHS. Celebrate the NHS. There's your first note. Celebrate the NHS. Find a pattern that you feel comfortable with. It could stay all on the same note, or you might want it to rise and fall a little bit. Celebrate the NHS. Or you could have celebrate the NHS. Celebrate the NHS. Find a pattern for the next line. Again, the notes could all be the same, you could repeat the same melody. It's up to you. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. Melodies often repeat, so for the third and fourth lines you might want to repeat the first and second lines, or you might want to just change 1 or 2 things for a bit of variety. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. Appreciate all doctors, nurses, all our brilliant healthcare workers. Find a way to write down or record what you come up with so you don't forget it when you come back to it. That doesn't mean you have to write it down on manuscript paper. You could record it on your phone, or you could make a note of the words and draw a line over it so that you remember whether the tune goes up or down over every word. Let's move on to step 5, arranging your accompaniment. You might decide to add an extra voice so that there are 2 or more people singing the same tune. Or you could have 2 voices singing a slightly different tune, with one voice singing 3 notes higher than the original melody. So if your melody is celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best, you might want the second voice to sing 3 notes higher. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. You might want to add some percussion to your song. For example, using the 4-beat pulse that we identified earlier on. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. You can get creative with what you've got available. If you don't have an egg shaker available, maybe you can use a jar and add some beans into it, or an empty pot and put some rice into it. If you don't have a drum, maybe you have an empty tin available. Adding instruments doesn't just mean adding volume to your song. You don't have to play the other instruments loudly. You could use dynamics to create texture and add variety. Perhaps your verse is quiet but your chorus is loud. Or perhaps you start the first verse quietly and then add some more instruments to each verse to really vary up the texture. You could add an instrument if you have one lying around at home. This mandolin has been in my garage for years and I don't play it. You could find the melody by trial and error, and then you could add this alongside a voice singing the song. So, celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. sure you'd do it better than I do. You could find a single note and add a sort of drone effect. Maybe it's the first note. Celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. Or you could choose a different set of notes and create a musical pattern or a musical motif. So, working at the NHS, celebrate the NHS, working hard, they do their best. You could use a different accompaniment on the instrument for the verses than the one you use for the chorus, again to add variety and texture. So, to recap, we've gone through the 5-step songwriting challenge. We have decided what to write about and who the song is for, written a catchy chorus, developed a story using the verses, composed our melody, rhythm and tune, and arranged our accompaniment. I hope you've enjoyed writing your own song, and I hope you'll write more songs and continue to be creative with music. Thank you for watching.